Hi, everyone. January 2nd, 2020. Oh, 2020. Every time I say it, I get the chills going up my spine because so much has happened already to our country. Okay, I'm going to read a whole lot of John Whitehead's commentary, another really good one. And if you have not bookmarked his site, the Rutherford Institute, especially for John Whitehead's commentary, I really hope you do. Okay, I'm going to be reading a whole lot of this because this may sound like an oxymoron, but he has really, this is a detailed summary. That's the oxymoron. Okay, it's a detailed summary. The radical changes that have already taken place, many of those changes have already cemented themselves here in what used to be referred to as the United States of America. They have already taken place. You have to understand that our country has already been taken over. And the reason why I'm reading this, prompted to read it now, is because my next video will be on what's happening in Virginia and gun confiscation, the possibility of the National Guard confiscating guns from law-abiding citizens in Virginia. Okay, we know that 2020 is going to be quite the year. 2019 was quite the year. 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, all the way back to, really, 2001, September 11. Tyranny took hold 9/11, 2001. So, 19 years later, what do we have? We've got tyranny. But the people have to realize that they actually have power. The people have the power. All we have to do is awaken that power in the people. The people are unaware. They're not educated to realize that they have power. The system is so geared that everyone believes the government will fix everything. We are the government. John Lennon. 20 years into the 21st century. And what do we have to show for it? Okay, here's a detailed summary of what we have to show for it. And yes, this is because the people have consented. They've consented to tyranny. They've said yes. Okay, we're all a part of this. If we don't act, they get to do whatever they want to do. And that is what has happened. I'm not talking about every individual adult in the United States, but I am talking about the majority. And when I look back at the decades that I was an adult in this country, I read an article just the other day, and I was looking for that article and I can't find it, but I will. Because it was talking about all of these events that were taking place, the bombing in Oklahoma, Waco, a whole lot of events that I was around for, and I was an adult, and many people understood the truth of what was going on with those events. But I was one of those who just accepted what mainstream media was telling us. Now, granted, when the internet came along, we were able to access an awful lot of information that, unless you bumped into people in your own life, in real life, and they told you and showed you evidence that, well, what your mainstream media reporters were telling you about these events, it was not accurate, you didn't have much to go on because you traveled in these social networks of people who were like-minded. They too were saturated in the lies, just accepting everything that they heard. All right. When I read that article and I was reading the list of all of these events, that were going back into, the late 80s, 90s, I was a part of allowing the lie to continue on. And therefore, I was, complicit with the incremental takeover of this country. I was complicit with the tyranny that was slowly coming out incrementally. Now, since 2001, it's been, the red flags have been shooting up all over the place. And it is one of the reasons why I can't stop now. I have to do everything that I can I just have to. I hate that I was a part of it, but once you get that you're a part of it, then, I'll speak for myself. You can't not do everything that you can to try to be a part of saving freedom. And it's, hanging on by a thread. So what do we have to show for it? Government corruption, tyranny, and abuse have propelled us at warp speed towards a full-blown police state in which egregious surveillance, roadside strip searches, police shootings of unarmed citizens, censorship, retaliatory arrests, the criminalization of lawful activities, warmongering, indefinite detention, SWAT team raids, thousands, like 80,000 a year, asset forfeiture, police brutality, profit-driven prisons, and pay-to-play politicians. That's the United States of America. So here's a small sampling of the laundry list of abuses. Cruel, brutal, immoral, unconstitutional, and unacceptable. The predators of the police state wreaked havoc on our freedoms, our communities, and our lives. The government didn't listen to the citizenry, refused to abide by the Constitution, and treated the citizenry as a source of funding and little else. Police officers shot unarmed citizens and their household pets. Government agents, including local police, were armed to the teeth and encouraged to act like soldiers on a battlefield. Bloated government agencies were allowed to fleece taxpayers. Government technicians spied on our emails and phone calls, and government contractors made a killing by waging endless wars abroad. The reason why I'm reading this is because it puts together everything that we have allowed to go on and what manifested from our consent. Silence is consent. Not doing anything to stop what is taking place is consent. And, you hear from people who are still quote unquote awake, but they're still so stuck in the matrix, believing that Trump is going to fix the day, you know? No, he's not. Trump came into office when tyranny had already set in. One man is not going to turn everything around, even if he's, oh, so genuine and really out there to try. It's impossible. It's so entrenched now. Because you've got to get, you have to get your responsibility in this. Because if you don't, you will never do anything to change. And you will always look at what is taking place and sit back, do nothing, believing somebody else is, taking the responsibility to fight it, to fight the tyranny. Until you admit your own behaviors or lack of action, the silence, the not getting involved in your own communities, that has allowed the tyranny to continue on and cement itself. But if you're not getting that you are absolutely a part of this tyranny, you will never change your behavior. American presidents, Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton, doesn't matter. Republican, Democrat, blue, red, doesn't matter. They all violate the Constitution, and Americans know it, and they do nothing. So the powers now that have amassed by each successive president through the negligence of Congress and the courts, don't think it's negligence. During the Obama years, in the beginning, I was like, okay, what the hell is going on? How is it that Obama so clearly was usurping congressional powers, and Congress, all of them in Congress, they were allowing it. They were allowing a president to take over legislative duties, authority, power. And I knew something was very wrong. But they don't work for the people, and they're not abiding by the Constitution, and they haven't been in this country, regardless who's in the office. They do not adhere to the Constitution, which is the law of the land. And Americans, I don't know if they even know. Well, there's actually more that don't know that the Constitution is the law of the land than know it. But we're not doing anything. Militarized police became a power unto themselves. 9/11 calls turned deadly. Traffic stops turned for the worse, lacking in transparency and accountability, protected by the courts and legislators, and rife with misconduct. America's police force, well, they became a growing menace to the people and the rule of law, the government's steady transformation of local police into standing military army. Local police agencies acquired even more weaponry, training, and equipment suited for the battlefield. We're at war. We're at war with our own government. And it's not just the federal government. It's state governments and local government. Police officers given free range to pull anyone over for whatever reason, subject them to forced cavity searches, forced colonoscopies, forced blood draws, forced breath alcohol tests, forced DNA extractions, forced eye scans, forced inclusion in biometric databases, and many are innocent. This is not a free country. The courts failed to uphold the justice and it was apparent that there was something very wrong with the Supreme Court. A review of critical court rulings over the past 2 decades, including some ominous ones, reveals a startling and steady trend towards pro-police state rulings. They do not uphold we the people, they uphold government. Surveillance. Massive databases using emergency surveillance. DNA and biometrics technologies. Americans have become sitting ducks for hackers and government spies alike. Billions of people have been affected by data breaches and cyber attacks on a daily basis. Americans have been made to relinquish the most intimate details of who we are. Biological makeup, genetic blueprints, biometrics. Mass shootings. Studies make clear that the government's gun violence inflicted on unharmed individuals by battlefield-trained SWAT teams, militarized police, and bureaucratic government agents trained to shoot first and ask questions later pose a greater threat to the safety and security of the nation than those mass shooters. Debtor's prison makes a comeback. Not content to expand the police state's power to search, strip, seize, raid, steal from, arrest, and jail Americans for any infraction, no matter how insignificant. State courts were given the green light to resume their practice of jailing individuals who were unable to pay hefty fines imposed by the American police state. These debtor prisons play right into the hands of the corporations that make a profit by jailing. We have a for-profit prison system. When someone's jailed, someone's making money. Does that sound like a good idea? Endless wars already bankrupted the nation to the tune of more than 20 trillion. Policing the globe, waging endless wars abroad hasn't made America or the rest of the world safer, but it has made an awful lot of money for the military-industrial complex. 200,000 U.S. troops are stationed in 177 countries throughout the world, including Africa, where troops reportedly carry out an average of 10 military exercises and engagements daily. Meanwhile, America's infrastructure is falling apart. Don't have money to help Americans, but we sure do have money to have stations in 177 countries. The interest on the money America has borrowed to wage its wars, estimated at $8 trillion. Show your papers. Yes, show me your papers. U.S. government has introduced measures allowing police and other law enforcement officials to stop individuals, citizens, non-citizens, stop anyone, doesn't matter. Demand they identify themselves and subject them to pat-downs, warrantless searches, and interrogations. These actions fly in the face of long-standing constitutional safeguards forbidding such police state tactics. And you know what? We are already brainwashed into believing that this is keeping us safer than if we didn't have it. Are you kidding me? And, you know, I think about all of the movies that I went to see with my liberal, progressive, educated friends. The professionals, you know, they were really educated. All of those movies about what was taking place in Germany, Czechoslovakia, all the countries, and oh my God. Then afterwards having conversations about what was taking place. And show me your papers. Always the surveillance of the citizens. We're talking about, during the World War II years, and oh my God. And you know what? A lot. A lot were always saying, how could the people in these countries have allowed that? Now I look at Americans who are allowing it. How can they not see, with all of those movies that they watched throughout the years, if that was the only education that they had for what was going on in other countries, the past is always repeated if you don't understand it and you forget about it. Well, it's being repeated right here in the United States. Yes, the United States has been taken over. And it's become Germany, Czechoslovakia. It's become a tyranny. It's here. It's easy to just go about your life when you're not suffering the consequences of that tyranny and think that it's just fine. But that's called narcissistic thinking. Because you're okay and you haven't experienced the tyranny. Well, you go on living this normalcy bias operating in your mind. Things aren't that bad. No, things are really, really bad. Really bad. You know, you look at what we're doing to the veterans. Now, I'm not, and never have been, an advocate for war. Yes, our soldiers, men, women, they are order followers. And if they didn't follow the orders, well, there wouldn't be a military-industrial complex. They could take it down. But they follow orders. So, it doesn't matter to me. They still don't deserve to be treated the way they are being treated. The plight of veterans today is America's badge of shame. Well, we've got lots of badges. And I'm sorry, I do not put the police, I do not put veterans, soldiers on a taller platform, pedestal than anyone else. You have decided, you made a choice to pursue a career. It doesn't make you any better or any less than anyone else who's a cog in the wheel, on a daily basis, spinning that wheel of an evil system so that it just continues. No difference. A lot of people come after the police and those in the military as if they're the ones who are doing this. No, we're all doing it. There ain't no way to not be a cog in the wheel. So when everybody stops being a cog in the wheel, wow, the system, boom, comes crashing down. And then you can, think outside the box and begin to get active in your community with, people who are not statist. I don't know. There's got to be something. But yeah, the reason why we can't get anywhere is because most, whether awake or asleep, do nothing, don't want to do anything to change, and they just continue to do the same old, perpetuating, allowing this evil to continue destroying everybody's life as long as it's not destroying my life. That's the crux of the problem that we face. But yeah, the veterans. Impoverished, unemployed, traumatized mentally, physically, depression, suicide, marital stress, homelessness, subpar treatment at clinics and hospitals left to molder, while their paperwork piles up within the VA and increasingly treated like criminals targeted for surveillance, censorship, threatened with incarceration or involuntary commitment, labeled as extremist or mentally ill, stripped of their Second Amendment rights for daring to speak out against government misconduct, breaking the veterans, breaking them so that they're unable to fight against the tyranny as they break us all. But those veterans, right? Well, they took an oath, right? And they are supposed to be protecting us from tyranny. You know? And it's not just from the enemies afar, but it's the domestic enemies. Oh, right, that part. Domestic enemies in our government all over our country. It's veterans. They took that oath. Well, some are fighting as best they can. But it doesn't matter. Because whether you have intentionally, deliberately, purposefully taken that oath for whatever reason, we all have that oath. It's called a responsibility. A responsibility to do whatever it is that you can to fight against tyranny, to allow freedom to continue. Free speech. Your free speech. Already gutted. Protest laws, free speech zones, bubble zones, trespass zones, anti-bullying legislation, zero tolerance policies, hate crime laws, shadow banning on the internet, and so many other, even legislation to curb our free speech. Yeah. Anything the politicians and prosecutors want to dream up. Anything that disagrees with their opinion and their agenda. Oh, this isn't about... It's not about protecting any class of people, any specific category. It's about denying all of us free speech. From the top down. Yeah, technically we're free to speak. What's the reality? Your YouTube channel gets terminated over and over. You can't post for a couple of weeks because you violated those guidelines when you didn't. Shadow banning. Google won't put in the search results your websites. Google, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they're all Amazon, they're all government. Oh, they put a pretty, well, not so pretty face up. Oh, I own it and I'm worth now billions of dollars. A Mark Zuckerberg or an Eric Schmidt. They're all government agents. Curbing your free speech, because Americans wouldn't allow their government to curb their free speech, so we'll create these Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We're going into the cyber world. It's going to all be digital, and that's where we have the control. Oh, we'll hide it with that private individual who owns a private company called Facebook, called Google. We'll hide it in that private corporation. It won't be government. It's government censorship. The reason for such censorship doesn't matter what it is. They claim to be protecting you while destroying the First Amendment of the Constitution. The renewed war on private property, forget about it. You don't have any. It can be taken from you in a heartbeat. And we have seen this throughout the years. Eminent domain, public interest, unpaid taxes, civil asset forfeiture, completely innocent. Oh, but, we think you're... the money that you have is tied to criminal activity, so we're seizing it. Oh, a whole lot of Americans have had that happen, and they're completely innocent. We don't have real property rights. Why? Because Americans haven't fought to hold on to their right. The House that you live in, the car you drive, the small acreage of land, or a lot of acreage passed down through your family. You can scrimp, you can save to acquire whatever money you manage to keep in your bank account after the government and its cronies have taken their first, second, third cut. None of it's safe. None of it is safe from the greedy grasp of government. Schools, like prisons. Oh my God. I see these articles on these schools, elementary and grade, the K through 12, and I'm like horrified. The radical change in our public education system has been so shocking. Baby boomers, then the Gen X's, never did we go to school with these safety policies, zero tolerance policies, surveillance cameras, metal detectors, random searches, drug sniffing dogs, school-wide lockdowns, active shooter drills, military police. That's what they are. We call them militarized police officers. They're military police. Our schools, now prisons. From the moment a child enters one of the nation's 98,000 public schools to the moment she graduates, she will be exposed to a steady diet of draconian, zero-tolerance policies that criminalize childish behavior, overreaching anti-bullying statutes that criminalize speech, school resource officers tasked with disciplining and or arresting so-called disorderly students, standardized testing that emphasizes just rote answers rather than critical thinking. It's frightening that parents aren't recognizing what they are sending their children off to Monday through Friday. We've got a lot of adults working in the public education system who even know what's happening, and they don't do anything because, well, paycheck. Because essentially we stand alone, right? Because we can't organize. We can't stand together and do anything differently. Because that's not the mindset of the American. Yes, we've been socially engineered, brought up to really live in a world that you're alone. You can't rely on anybody. You're lucky if you have, a decent family. But it's all about this competitive system that has unleashed a disease. And that disease is, everyone's out for themselves, and that is really showing its face. But if we could band together, organize, we could change things. It's not an impossibility, but it means the individual has to change. And they have to think outside the box. They have to put in energy and effort. Kids in first grade are being arrested. So the deep state, we all know, took over. The American system of representative government, overthrown, gone. Deep state, police state, military, corporate, industrial complex, a profit-driven, militaristic corporate state bent on total control and global domination through the imposition of martial law here at home by fomenting wars abroad. The government of the people, by the people, for the people, gone. In place, shadow government. A corporatized, militarized, entrenched bureaucracy that is fully operational and staffed by unelected officials who are, in essence, running the country, calling the shots in Washington. No matter who sits in the White House, doesn't matter. The government that, he refers to, and what I talk about is not about this two-party, we don't have two parties. That's the staged play that so many Americans are so enthralled with and won't give up. They think it's reality. They're watching a staged play. What really is going on is those who are behind the curtain, pulling the strings, the unelected. And yes, this shadow government makes a mockery of elections. No, we make a mockery of elections every time we get so involved in these campaigns that go on forever. Over 2 years. So you elect a president, he comes into office in January, and, well, he works for about 2 years, and then he campaigns. You're kidding me. And we have to listen to this trash 2 years running. We make a mockery. We make a mockery when we accept the lies, when we maintain our delusions at all cost, when we don't do a thing about the tyranny that has already taken place. And boy, we have seen it speed up every single year. 2020, it ain't going to be any different. Everything the founders of this country feared has come true. It's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious. It's come true. So, no matter who sits in the White House, politics won't fix a system that is broken beyond repair. Protests, populist movements haven't done anything. They very quickly get infiltrated and taken over. So how do you not only push back against the police state's bureaucracy, corruption, cruelty, but also launch a counter-revolution aimed at reclaiming control of the government using non-violent means? You start by changing the rules and engaging in some non-violent guerrilla tactics. You take part in grassroots activism. Nullification. Nullify everything the government does that flies in the face of the principles on which the nation was founded. Thwarting the government in its relentless march towards outright dictatorship may rest with the power of juries and local governments. I'm sorry, but I'm sure John Whitehead, as an attorney, constitutional attorney, understands lawsuits take a very, very long time. And relying on juries, okay, so most criminal trials are very quick. Civil trials, no, they're not. So do you think we have the time to wait for a trial and then the jury to nullify? We don't have time. We don't have time. Police officers, elected officials, treated with general leniency, well, it's up to us to demand in our own communities that the police follow the law and actually get punished if they don't. Demand that they adhere to the Constitution, all of those rights. It's up to you. It's up to you in your own community. So there's much more. Any hope of freeing ourselves rests, as it always has, at the local level. So many people, well, you're always bitching and complaining and you never give us a solution. First of all, recognize that you're an adult. Start thinking of solutions yourself. Don't wait for the leader, because you are the leader. And I have so often, I can't tell you, you've got to get active in your own communities. It starts at a local level. There's nothing you can do about what's going on in Washington, D.C., except watch the show they put on But there's a whole lot you can do in your own community. You start trying to find those in your own community because they're there, but so many people now are afraid to speak up. You try to find those people in your community who are like-minded, and you begin to have meetings, you organize, and you get involved, and you find out what's happening in your town council. What are they doing? Who is behind that curtain? And you start feeling the power that you have. And the only way that you can, bring active that dormant power that sits inside you is by taking actions. And the more you take actions, the more you will fully realize your own power. Yes, it's up to you. It is absolutely 100% up to you. And then the you in the aggregate. America was meant to be primarily a system of local governments. You got to take back your communities. I've gone on. This was long, but it needs to be said over and over again. Let's not take the mistakes, carnage, toxicity, and abuse of this past decade into 2020. As long as we continue to allow callousness, cruelty, meanness, immorality, ignorance, hatred, intolerance, racism, militarism, materialism, meanness, and injustice, magnified by this echo chamber of the nasty tweets and government-sanctioned brutality, to trump justice, fairness, and equality, there can be no hope of prevailing against the police state. Yes, everyone needs to hold everyone accountable. Whether it is your friends, your family, your coworkers, your community members. The only way that you can ever get anywhere is trusting others. So anybody who lies, you hold them accountable for each and every lie. Oh, yes, the healing process can look very messy, but it is necessary to get through to something worth living. So you hold accountable everybody who lies, including yourself. You get to be a stand-up person who does not just speak the principles that, oh, people love me because I'm this, I'm that. No, you live them. You live them. You speak out about what's happening in this country. You be the change you want to see. Many people, there's so much I can say, so I'm not going to. All right, look, it's up to you. So for 2020, perhaps you can start thinking about what it is you can do on a daily basis to change your own behavior, even if those behaviors are small, to change your own self so that change will manifest. Wow. Every day, improve the self-awareness. Improve your awareness of your own self. Get how you behave in the world and how it contributes to or against the tyranny that has now manifested.